All right, good afternoon, everybody, or good afternoon if you're in California, I guess. Good evening, everybody, if you're on the East Coast. We hope everybody's doing well. This is another episode of the Unalienable, right? Cordie Williams will be here soon. Dr. Cordie will be here soon. He's experiencing a slight technical difficulty, but it is being worked out. He should be joining us halfway or so through the show tonight to specifically talk about the Kari Lake lawsuit. Apparently, Dr. Cordie has heard from some folks about that lawsuit, so he's going to get you some information when he gets there, when he gets back. As of right now, you're going to be stuck with this ugly mug right now for the third time today. I would say this is the third time today, right? We had We Will Not Comply in the morning, Rumble.com, Loud Majority US. Then we had LFA TV. Tomorrow is when what I just recorded aired. For those of you who don't know, tomorrow, if you listen to the Jenna Ellis Show, the podcast, somebody who has a striking resemblance to Bradley Cooper guest hosted the Jenna Ellis Show today. So that's pretty cool. So if you want to check that out, that's awesome. Also, shout out to Brennan, if you know who that is, my girlfriend. She set up this ridiculous contraption at home. If you use a light and a white, and that's not to be racist, a white canvas shopping bag, it diffuses the light, and it really makes people as hideous as me look great. So the lighting looks good tonight. Hopefully everybody sees that this is a good-looking show. So anyway, we're going to talk about the border. We're going to talk about Title 42. We're going to get to Kari Lake and the lawsuit when Dr. Cordie returns. Shout out to the Cool Kids table on Rumble. Shout out to the Getter crew over there on Getter, which is a fantastic platform. We love the crew over there, Jason Miller, Kaylin Dorr, Bobby Levy, Gavin Wax, all the folks that are over there doing a wonderful job over there at Getter, especially Getter Visions, the new alternative to TikTok. And so let's start with the Joe Biden travel restrictions. You know, we're talking about Kari Lake's lawsuit. We're going to get to that when Dr. Cordie comes back. But the Biden travel restrictions, and I talked about this, a sneak peek, Jenna Ellis Show. But the Biden travel restrictions are something that I think is hilarious right now. If we just think about exactly what it was that we saw back in 2020, just 2 short years ago, when Donald Trump used the travel ban to stop people from what country, folks? Where did the virus come from, folks? I know. Do it. Say it. Do Trump. China. The virus came from China. You know about it. When you hear about it, we could talk about it. The virus came from China. That's exactly where it came from. And we know that we used the travel ban. We saved a lot of people's lives. We did a lot of people. We saved a lot of people. Remember this. Now, Joe Biden is saying and is now putting forth restrictions on people from China. Now, let's take a look at this tweet. This is from John Hassan on Twitter. I'm going to pop this on your screen right now because it's important to know what the left said, when they said it, and how they said it back in the day regarding Donald Trump's China ban. Take a look. Biden is considering a ban on travelers from China. Now, right now, Biden's ban on travelers from China, it's not a ban, but it's enhanced restrictions regarding COVID, and we're going to get to that in a second. Biden is considering a ban on travelers from China. He called Trump xenophobic for doing the same thing. As a matter of fact, Sleepy Joe Biden came out and called it all sorts of terrible things when Donald Trump banned travelers from China, as he was allowed to do, as a matter of fact, as he was allowed to do. So here's an article from the Post-Millennial. Biden administration imposes restrictions on travelers from China due to COVID concerns, okay? The Biden administration has announced a set of new restrictions for travelers arriving in the United States from China. China, you know, that's where the virus came from. We called it the Kung flu. We called it the Wu flu. I call it the China virus, and it's a horrible thing. The President Xi virus, the CCP virus. The Biden administration has announced a set of new restrictions for travelers arriving in the United States from China as COVID cases in the country continue to surge under the new regulations, which take effect January 5th. Anyone over 2 years of age. Imagine that. You're afraid of 2-year-olds. Little Chinese 2-year-old coming in. Or a 2-year-old that's been to China. You might have the China virus. You can't come into our country. But we can let everybody in over the border. No problem. So let's slow down. You come from China. You can't come in if you're testing positive from COVID. If you're coming over the border, you don't have to test for COVID, and you can do whatever the hell you want. So, how long until the people from China realize, sick or not sick, fly to Mexico, walk into the country, not have to deal with customs and deal with anything else? How long until they realize that? Anyone over 2 years of age who enters the United States from China, Hong Kong, or Macau. They call it Macau. The last time I was talking about Macau, I was talking about Whoopi Goldberg. Wow, would you believe that we're going to get banned? Whoopi. She's more of a whale, though. Anyone over 2 years of age who enters the U.S. from China, Hong Kong, or Macau by air will be required to present a negative COVID test taken no more than 2 days before they left the country to travel into the United States. Negative COVID test. Has to be 2 days old. So, let's think about how stupid this is. Let's say you test negative 2 days ago. You leave China. 2 days ago, okay. More than 2 days before they left the country. So somebody who leaves China on the 26th has to have a negative COVID test on the 24th. Well, you had Christmas, you have all these other days that you could go out and contract the virus and not know. But as long as you got that negative test, you can come into the country. This is stupid. Doesn't make any sense. Like all testing doesn't make any sense. Testing is delayed. It's all baked in. You don't test positive until several days after having the virus and being contagious. You could test negative in the morning and catch the virus in the afternoon. You don't know. But anyway, I digress. Anyone over the age of 2 who enters the United States from China, Hong Kong, or Macau by air will be required to present a negative COVID test taken no more than 2 days before they left the country to travel to the United States by air. Notice, no COVID tests on the border because they're dreamers. We have to be nice to these people. They're dreamers. They're fleeing persecution. Okay. So we're talking about, shout out to Juicebox Brothers Studios over on Getter. I'm going to jump on their show at some point in the coming days. I got your DM. Juicebox Bros Studios says, my 10-year-old is over here laughing her ass off every time you say China. Well, keep laughing, 10-year-old. We love it. Keep laughing. So China. So you got to test positive if you're coming by air. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. The Chinese are coming. The COVID is coming. It's like Paul Revere. You got to test negative if you're coming in by air. However, if you're walking over the border, no test. It's all good. And we'll ship you all over the country, too. All right. There I see on Getter, I'm delayed, so I just saw myself swinging the imaginary lantern. It's pretty funny. Okay, further on in the article, according to The Hill, the rules apply to all passengers regardless of nationality. Well, we couldn't discriminate on race. Or, you ready for this one? Vaccination status. Time out. We're going to call a quick TO. Okay? Now, I thought the vaccine. Now, I didn't actually think this, folks. And we're getting spammed, it looks like, on YouTube. There's somebody in the YouTube chat there that's one of those scam pages. So I'm going to try and block it. Here, they said, don't click that link. Some of you thirsty dudes out there will click that and go, ooh. No. Block them. Blocker. That's what Joe Gatto says on Practical Joker. Okay. I thought we were being told that the vaccine, the Fauci ouchie, the miracle drug, the injection that offers protection. I'm coming up with rhymes all over the place right now. Right? I thought that the vaccine was the key. According to the White House, and this was an ABC report one day before the Washington Post destroyed the narrative, according to the White House, the COVID boosters would prevent essentially every COVID death. Remember that? Prevent every COVID death. The next day, Washington Post comes out, says 58% of people who have been dying from COVID in August We're vaccinated people. Okay, so there goes that narrative. But I thought the vaccine was the key. So why would we be so nasty to people who got vaccinated in China? Why would we do that? Could it be? I sound like the guy from Oak Island. Wood at 90 feet? Could it be that the Lagina brothers have stumbled upon the offset chamber to the money pit? The treasure map. That one looks like it's from the 1700s. I love that show. And Gary Drayton. Shout out Gary Drayton. I don't know him, but shout out. Could it be that the vaccine doesn't work? Shoot, I'm on YouTube. Well, oh no. Could it be that the vaccine has a hard time working? Has a hard time working. No, we're going to make sure that even if you're vaccinated, what is this? I got a piece of hair sticking out under the hat. You're not warning me about this? It's cute. Okay. I'm just kidding. Could it be that the vaccine doesn't actually work or has a hard time blocking the transmission and keeping people alive who have caught the China virus? Is that why we are taking vaccination status out of the equation when testing people coming in from the country known as China? Those who got COVID more than 10 days before their flight have the option of providing documented evidence that they have recovered. Anyone traveling to the United States via Vancouver, Toronto, or Seoul, notice what's not there, Mexico. You could come into the country from Mexico. You could do it, and nobody would care. It's a horrible thing. They're destroying our country. It's a terrible thing that we're watching happen. Anyone traveling to the United States via Vancouver, Toronto, or Seoul will also be required to provide a negative test, but only if they have been in China within the previous 48 hours. China's zero COVID policies, remember those? The zero COVID policies? Where they had apartment buildings. They took lockdowns to a new level. They had people in lab coats and like face masks and those tanks that look like scuba divers on the streets of China. Welding shut. This was literally a lockdown. They didn't just put a bar or like a padlock. They welded the doors of the apartment building shut. They welded them closed. They didn't let anybody in. They didn't let anybody out. Total lockdown. Welded. Imagine your home or the building in which your home was in. The exit, the only one, is welded closed. Then they had a house fire, a big apartment fire, and people died. Remember Bernie saying, people are going to die if we don't have health care. $15 an hour, minimum wage. Inflation is out of control. People are going to die. They died in China because of lockdown, zero COVID policies. What did those zero COVID policies result in? The white paper protests. So they roll back the zero COVID policies. And they roll back the white paper. I'm sorry, they roll back the zero COVID policies. Why? Why would they do that? To appear as if they're taking the side of the people, to appear as if President Xi is compassionate, to appear as if he is sympathetic and upset and remorseful and regretful of the people that burned alive, and they don't care. So they started pushing what? Vaccination. Vaccination. Vaccination is the key. China, a totalitarian state. China, a totalitarian state. China. Pushing the vaccines. Making people test just to get some bread. Right? You've seen those pictures, those videos, people in long lines in the cold, standing, freezing their toes off. But in all actuality, might not be a bad thing because feet are gross. It's funny. Yeah, they're disgusting. To get a vaccination, to get a COVID test done so they could eat. All of these harsh policies, all of these strict lockdowns, all of these vaccine mandates, all of these vaccination requirements and regulations in China. And yet we're still seeing COVID surge. I thought the vaccine was the key. It isn't. We know it isn't. Evidence is being shown everywhere that it's not the key. If you would like to get vaccinated, go right ahead. I think Russell, it's your boy Russ. Russell, our resident potato, he posted on Facebook that they're trying to normalize dying suddenly the same way they're trying to normalize Drag Queen Story Hour. 30-something-year-olds that are just passing out, dying for no apparent reason is not normal. Just like drag queens reading The Three Little Pigs to a classroom full of children is also not normal. Now I got a text from Dr. Cordie. He's on his way back, and he will be with us shortly. If you're watching on Rumble, I'm going to ask you a humble favor. I'm going to ask you to humbly hit the Rumble button. Be humble and rumble, please. I would really appreciate it. That would be great. Take the link, share it all over your social media. That would be fantastic. If you're on Getter, hit the repost button, the like button. We do love it. And if you're watching elsewhere, please share, repost, retweet, whatever the case may be. I know we're live on Twitter as well as we get back to these new China restrictions. I see somebody, I'm Debbie24, saying I look gorgeous. Oh, I do. I look gorgeous. Someone's gonna screen record that and go, why are you gay? That's what they're gonna do. You are gay. That's okay. K Tony on Getter says Biden said if you're vaxxed, you will not get COVID. This is true. Remember when he did this? Get vaccinated. Remember when he grabbed the microphone like a little girl's head? Get vaccinated. Ariad. Okay, ARIADNE 1707 with the orange logo on Getter says you are very entertaining and clever. I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, on to the next part of the article. The move to impose restrictions on passengers arriving in the United States from China is meant to reduce the number of potentially infectious people entering the country. I totally get why he's doing it. That's why I supported when Donald Trump did it and shut the border down. That's why we supported Title 42, not only because of a public health threat, but because, we have no way to take care of 15,000 people crossing the border a day. There's no way to take care of these people. There's no resources. That's not me saying it because I'm a racist. That's not me saying it because I'm xenophobic. That's not me saying it because, you want to end dreamers. No, this is what Eric Adams is saying. The mayor of New York City. This is what Lori Lightfoot is saying. The mayor of Chicago. Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C. That's what they're saying. We can't take these people. And they're only receiving about a couple hundred of them. What happens to these towns that are receiving thousands of people a day? And those are only the ones that we know about. Then you get into the fentanyl epidemic and the drug smuggling and the human trafficking that's happening on the southern border. Folks, that is a humanitarian crisis down there. But no, we don't say that's a humanitarian crisis. What do we say, ladies and gentlemen, is a humanitarian crisis? It was Martha's Vineyard. Remember this? We respect women. We value black lives. We stand with our LGBTQ community members. Let me pause there because it's not just LGBTQ anymore. Get woke. It's LGBTQAIP+. Excuse me. What happened to the asexuals, the intersexuals, and the Ps, which is, I guess, pansexual, and then the pluses, and the two-spirits. There are people who identify as trees and coyotes and humans. What happened to them? So Martha's Vineyard, bigoted. Got to update that sign. We stand with immigrants. We stand with refugees. We stand with indigenous peoples and with people of all faiths. We stand with our community. All are welcome here until they actually show up. Then they're not welcome there. Not anymore, right? Remember what happened when Ron DeSantis flew one plane? And I remember taking the exact same route from Florida to Martha's Vineyard on Flight Simulator. Look, it's sure. I got the joystick right here. I was practicing just in case I had to start flying immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. I was ready to go. Damn, this guy's got props. Remember that? And they landed in Martha's Vineyard. And within, what was it, like 24, 48, the maximum 72 hours, there was a humanitarian crisis. And the military was called in. And all the illegals, the 54 of them or whatever, were deported. Yeah, but we stand with immigrants. We stand with refugees. Okay, until they show up in the backyard. Remember Kamala Harris. This is an atrocity. The border secure. The border secure. The border. Till the border shows up on her front lawn, she realizes the border isn't secure. Then it's Greg Abbott is using these people as political pawns. No, He's showing you that you're a hypocrite, that nobody should take you seriously, that you're a liar, and that you have no standards. But that's on the border. Now, this move by the Biden administration, I will say, is a move that I support. I think we should be tougher on people trying to come into the country, not just because of COVID, but because this is our country. How many people that you know, or how many people do you think, when they find out that it's easy to sneak in on the southern border, it's like I made this argument, the trans bathroom debate. Let's take this trans bathroom debate where you say men should be able to go in the women's room. That's the woke perspective, right? Men who identify as women should be able to go in the women's room and be able to go to the bathroom in a way that affirms their gender. Like Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, which also rhymes with the virus that came from China. Lindsey Graham, who sits when he pees, he might use the women's room, okay? And let's say, it's not Lindsey Graham, but let's say there's a trans man who identifies as a woman and wants to affirm his gender, so he wants to go into the ladies' room to pee. I am 100% against this. I am 100% against that. You can identify any way you want, but you cannot subject the rest of the people to your gender dysphoria. Right? It's not our job to normalize your insanity, essentially, right? And I'm not saying that all trans people who go into the opposite biological gender or biological sex's bathroom, I'm not saying that all trans people are predators. What I'm saying is it makes it easy. If a predator or if somebody who's a sick and twisted individual sees a trans woman, a man who used to be a woman, walk into that ladies' room, he can go out. I can just go in. No one's going to ask a question because if they do, I can accuse them of being insensitive or a bigot or a homophobe or a transphobe or whatever. Then he sits there, lying in wait, like a snake in the grass, waiting for an innocent woman to walk in and she gets sexually assaulted. We've seen this happen in Loudoun County. We've heard about incidents like this that have happened in other places. It doesn't happen all the time. I'm not saying all trans people are predators. I'm not saying they're all dangerous. I'm saying because we've normalized that level of insanity, we are letting the insane into places where they shouldn't go. And not that I'm saying that the actual people who identify as trans are going to commit these crimes, but because they're expecting us to be okay with men walking into the women's room, those people who are ready to commit those crimes have easier access to do so. Does this make sense? Are we all following that? Let me double check on all my chats. And it looks good. We're all following this, ladies and gentlemen? I hope so. Now let's look at the southern border. Let's use that same example on the southern border. Okay? You have a southern border that is wide open. Anybody can come in. We're told if we reject asylum claims on the southern border, we're sending these people back to a country where they're being politically persecuted. We're sending these people back to a country where they're being victimized. They have a bad life. They're trying to find a better life. I have sympathy for folks like that. I do. But if we let them come in, we let them break the law to come in, and then we give them a pathway to citizenship where we don't hold them accountable for breaking a very important and serious law, illegally entering the country. There will be bad actors who see us positively reinforcing that bad behavior. You follow? You enter the country illegally. You're rewarded with citizenship after a period of time. You're not deported. You're not held. You're not prosecuted. Nothing. Right? A bad actor can then very easily go, well, it was okay when he did it, so I'm going to do it. How long until the next terrorist attack is somebody who entered on the southern border? We found out that there were a bunch of radicals that were found in Florida. How long until the next mass shooting that occurs in this country is somebody who crossed the southern border looking to do harm to Americans because they found out how easy it was to cross into our country, and they found out the fact that prior examples proved that those people would not be held accountable if they were to cross the border illegally. How long until that happens? Does this make sense? As Dr. Cordie Williams is calling in, so now I'm going to try and get him in here. And let me see if I can get him through. We're gonna swap screens here, and everybody, let's see. Give me 1 second if I can get this going. And that should be, nope, that's not it. Let me see what I have. if I can get this here. Hold on. There he is. Dr. Cordie Williams is on the screen. Doc, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Amateur move, man. Laptop dead. Had to drive back to the house. Merry Christmas, ho ho ho, all that stuff.
Hey, don't
How are
talk
you?
about a vice president that way.
Yeah. Don't know where I am. Confuse a Christmas tree. Back in the South in Alabama, they always say you don't know your a-hole from your belly button, right? So I think that's Joe Biden. A lot of the time, what did he do? He was walking towards a Christmas tree and then tried to sniff a girl's hair, or what?
I
Or
don't know,
started.
but I saw a video of him setting up his Christmas tree in front of a door, so that doesn't really make too much sense. I'm going to set it up right here. It looks good. We're sniff the star. It's
Corn pop on furry legs.
Yeah, corn pop. It's tree. It's furry. It's hairy, like my legs. It's insane. So what's going on?
No, man. So, I get this phone call. Me and the boys are getting on the plane to come back from the freedom-loving state of Texas, the New Braunfels area, which you're in. If you're near Schertz, New Braunfels, go to Zipliner's Kitchen. My best friend since I was 10 years old, Dominic Reed, owns that place. If you want brisket, if you want turnip greens, collard greens, every green you can think of, brisket. They got a 10-pound brisket sandwiches. They got barbecue,
Huge.
any Southern cooking you can think of, cornbread, grits, all of it, breakfast. They'll do it up there. But we were coming back from that great family and coming back from some great cooking. We're sitting on the plane, and I missed a call, and I listened to the voicemail, and it's people down the chain, not too far the chain, from Kari Lake's attorneys,
Whoa.
and they're trying to get people on and all that stuff. And so you and I are thrown in the hat officially.
Cool.
But I called this guy back. He refers me to this lady that's a wife of one of the attorneys, and I'm not going to say names for obvious reasons.
Sure.
But basically, the story is that, and this was a call last night. As of last night, they were kind of, on the fence of, hey, are they going to get the appeal? Are they not? Obviously, they got the appeal.
Right.
The funny thing about it, Shawn, is there were no sanctions. There were no sanctions, and they were allowed to appeal. But if you look at the ruling of Judge whatever the heck his name is, you almost kind of smell that stench in the air that we've smelled like around the 2020 election. And it's not potpourri, I always say, and it certainly isn't freedom. It smells like poopy,
Yeah.
as little kid says.
Yes.
Yeah. And he loves talking about that, by the way. If you have a 4-year-old or 6-year-old.
Well, first of all, he's a star. Because in that campaign ad, I tell you what, when you called me and you're like, hey, I got this ad, you're going to love it, this, that. And I saw that ad, I said, oh my goodness, this is great. In San Francisco, they poop in the streets. And I was like, this is just great.
Golden, right? And I tried to make the gas one as funny, but it just wasn't. But he pulls up in his
It was still good, though.
power wheel.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was okay, right? It was okay. He should have said something catchy then, but there were meltdowns all through that filming. That's what people don't see.
We need the blooper reel on that one then.
Oh yeah, you definitely need the blooper reel, because he'll go. I got to make fun. My son's so cute, but like anything he does, he's like, "Daddy, I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared," and he'll start moving his arms like this, especially around bath time. Hates bath time, so which I don't know why. He has to. The guy can swim like a fish in the pool, but he has to have a towel over his face when he gets a bath and gets his hair washed. I don't understand it. So
what happened with this? What do you know about the or based off your conversation, whatever you're allowed to tell us about the Lake trial? What's going on there?
Well, I mean, I think the judge was paid off. Yeah, you always have to get me if I start talking about my son. This will be a 2-hour show.
No, it's good.
But no, I think the judge was paid off. Something's happening, because my point is this: the guy didn't put sanctions in. Instead of paying $250,000 or $500,000, which would be the court fees with sanctions, is my understanding, she's only paying $30,000. He's allowing her to appeal. So without sanctions, which was requested by the false governor, just like we have a false president, we have a false governor in Arizona.
Yep.
And
Shady
so it's
slumps.
almost like something is fishy about that. Like almost like he's saying, you know what? I can't rule in your favor because of these forces of evil, and I don't have any testicular fortitude, and I'm a beta. I traded in my man card and alpha card. That's what I put in a transvestite stocking for Christmas. And it just doesn't make any sense. So something's going on there, and that's kind of the biggest update I have is with no sanctions, with the appeal being allowed. Now, the question is, if this thing doesn't happen and it doesn't go our way, Shawn, man, God help us. Because I think this is that last ditch effort that we have as freedom lovers and grassroots conservatives, because that's proof to the other side that they can pretty much do whatever they want,
Yeah.
especially battleground states.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing because you watch the election in Arizona and you see all the machines in Maricopa County, which is their most populous county. It's the county with the most residents. And you see, and look, everybody knows that Republicans, and I'm not saying we should have deep faked them in Arizona and kind of said, oh, well, we're all going to vote early, so you can't screw with us on Election Day. No, leave Election Day alone. That's our day. But you see that we had thrown all of our eggs in that one basket on Election Day, and they came up with a problem. There was the machines were turning off. They weren't working, and there were 19-inch ballots printed on 20-inch paper, and it wasn't reading them properly. And you had disenfranchised voters, and you're right. If this is allowed, or if there is not stricter, eyes and people really keeping tabs on what is going on with these elections, this is going to keep happening. And look, every time there's an issue in an election, it always seems to break one way. It's not like Republicans ever, people will point to hanging Chads in 2000 and that went George W. Bush's way. And you can make that argument all you want. I know Florida was a red state there, and that's fine. Right? Like, these issues, the mail-in ballots, the found ballots that always seem to break heavily in one direction, it always seems to break one way. When the machines break, it's not in early voting, it's on Election Day. There's never an issue counting mail-in ballots. It always, seems to go on for a very long time. Why does it always break one way? And I mean, can this be overturned?
Well, I think it's certainly possible. It's scary what the first ruling was, and this is what I meant to mention a second ago. The way I interpreted the judge's ruling and the way I heard several other people read it too is it's kind of like he said, unless you don't have Professor Plum in the library with the candlestick, we're not going to say it's election fraud. We're not going to say that we need another election. And any impropriety, especially to the degree we're talking about, I mean, I can see how with the way in 2020, even though we know it was a fraudulent election.
Yeah.
I mean, and I love President Trump, but Rudy Giuliani has litigated many amazing things.
Right.
But having Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and one of my favorite guys, Mike Lindell, like I love those people, but I don't know that attacking machines and very complicated computer systems, which they would have burned them alive anyways.
Right.
We know that.
Right.
We know that there's no way they ever would have found any fault in the election process. But if we had gone over ballots and kind of the 2,000 mules narrative,
yes,
early on, that would have been like we could have sold that to the public. And then you have somebody that's a very effective litigator about details, somebody that honestly is articulate and tactful as Kari Lake is. Because Kari Lake has a very amazing way of telling you to go F yourself and stick it up your throat and out the other end.
She's like Ron DeSantis in that way. I know a lot of people they feel a certain way about DeSantis. I just happen to love the way that he's handling the media, specifically when there was the "Don't Say Gay" bill, which doesn't say "Don't Say Gay," and he just one of the reporters was asking him a question at the podium, and they just sharing all the "Don't Say Gay" bill, and he just stopped them and he said, "Does it say that in the bill?" And he just kept asking, "Does it say it in the bill? Is it in the bill?" And the reporter said no. And then he just ripped him to shreds, but he didn't do it in such a way that Donald Trump does. And I love Trump. Don't get me wrong. He's a great guy. He's a handsome guy, beautiful hair, unbelievable complexion. They say orange is a great thing. Orange is the new black. That's what they say. But no, it's the, he will rip somebody, but when he calls Rosie O'Donnell a loser, they go, "That's no way to talk to a woman," right? Ron DeSantis or Kari Lake or someone along those lines would rip you, and they won't give you a reason to say why it was bad. They'll just say that it hurt my feelings, and I happen to love the way Kari Lake handles people too. I think it's great, and I agree with you about the 2020 election that we shouldn't have hit machines, even if there are issues with them. We should have gone the 2,000 mules route. That's the route that I've always wanted to go down, because there's proof. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, geo-tracking, if you could use geo-tracking to put somebody in the Capitol on January 6th and then hold them without a trial, then you can use geo-tracking to say that somebody stuffed ballots into a ballot box, correct?
100%. And, in this case, the printers were certified and working the day before.
Right.
All of a sudden, they don't the day of. And the paper they're supposed to use, like in these printers that they know works, this is what I heard and the way I read everything. On the day of election day, all of a sudden they have different paper. I mean, give me a FUCK break here. If that's not fraud, if that's not rigging, and if that's not intentional, then you got to be a moron.
There's only
Right?
so many coincidences we can have until it's
Yeah,
not a
right.
coincidence anymore. I mean, you can't just coincidentally walk outside, coincidentally get wet, and then coincidentally say it's not raining. It's raining. How else does that happen when you walk outside? Right? I mean, there comes a point in time when we're dealing with issues like this that coincidences, when they keep happening, are no longer a coincidence. It's not just happening because they did. If the machines were working the day before, if the printers are working the day before, if everything was prepped the day before, why did they not work on election day?
And honestly, just if you stopped right there as a judge, I don't know what their in this case what the burden of proof was, right? Like meaning, when is the burden of proof proved? I don't know what that was, but I would think it would be beyond a reasonable doubt. So how can you say in this case? How can you say, what, like, how can we say it hasn't been met? Because just there alone, I think it was 300,000 something odd votes, and she needed what, like 8,000 to overturn it, or 2,000
I
to
think she
overturn it?
lost by 17,000, lost, air quotes, by
Yeah.
17,000.
I mean, that's
I
ridiculous.
mean, there were a ton. There was the mishandling of ballots. Did they get counted? Did the door number 3 ones get mixed in with another one? They were using signature verification when it was convenient for them, and then they decided not to use it when it wasn't convenient for them. There were checkout procedures. I remember there being this story, I was reading about it, that the election workers were not trained properly. So if somebody went to a polling place in Maricopa County and the machine spit their ballot back out and didn't count their vote, they had to put their ballot in door number 3 and hope it was counted at the center, the tabulation center in downtown Maricopa, wherever that was, right? That center, the election center, which a
Yeah,
lot of
that
people were saying,
crappy
don't
place.
do that, right? So then they would have to go to another polling place. Now, what happens when they go to the other polling place, I remember reading about this, and this is according to Arizona election law, if they walked into another polling place because they were never signed out of the previous polling place, or the fact that they visited the previous polling place in general, meant they had to fill out a provisional ballot in the second polling place. So they fill out a provisional ballot, which is another ballot saying, well, I'm amending my vote. I'm going to cast it here instead of casting it there. The only problem is Arizona election law says that if you were never checked out of that first polling place that you went to where the machine malfunctioned but you were never properly checked out, your provisional ballot was to be discarded and not counted. So how many people wound up having to go cast 2 votes and have none of them count? That's ridiculous. And if that's not something that, look, whether you could prove intent on that issue or not, that is election malpractice. At the very least, that is an issue that you could say people's right to vote. I mean, we talk about Georgia. Joe Biden called it Jim Crow 2.0, Jim Eagle. Stacey Abrams wanted to tell you, Stacey Abrams, for the LFA crowd that's out there, wanted to tell you that voter suppression was rampant in Georgia, and that's why she lost in 2018, and why this in Arizona is voter suppression. You literally had people voting and then had their votes thrown out because of a procedural error. This has to be something that can be rectified, and if it's not, we're screwed.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. And in the wake of all that, what do, right? I mean, the response from the Republican Party, useless Ronna McDaniel, and now people are all on the bandwagon of voting in my opinion, another wolf in sheep's clothing,
Dylan.
Harmy Dillon, which I don't think she has a chance anyways, because I think it's baked and rigged like you do, so it's not going to matter.
Well, Lee Zeldin is the one who came out and said that. That's the reason why he's not running. He'd be the most qualified guy. He's the one who wants to evolve the party, and he came out and he said, you know what, the results are pre-baked. Basically, it's rigged for Ronna. And that's what. Now, why would it be rigged for Ron? We find out a couple weeks ago all the spending and the lavish trips and the luxury vehicles, and we spent $300,000 on flowers. Like, go pick some daisies. You know, like 300. How? I know. Well, they fundraised way more than that, and it's a drop in the bucket. That doesn't matter. That $300,000 could have gone to Blake Masters. That $300,000 could have gone and helped, J.R. Majewski in Ohio. That $300,000 could have helped so many. Dr. Oz, I don't like him, but at least you wouldn't have John Fetterman in the Senate for the next 6 years. Could have helped Herschel Walker. But we spent it on flowers instead. Think about that. That's a whole ad buy on television. You know how campaign money is. That's crazy.
No, you're right, man. Canvassing, getting people to do voter turnout. I mean, when's the last time we saw Republicans playing to win? And I think that we have more of a rhino infiltration than we think we do.
I agree.
And I mean, just in Arizona, looking at that PAC by what's his name, where you have Republicans taking libtard money, right? Taking libtard money for a PAC to go against Kari Lake, or anybody that said there was voter fraud or election fraud in 2020. I mean, these are the forces that people are dealing with, that we're dealing with, that I don't think the average voter, the average patriot, really realizes how intense and complicated it is, and how in bed so many of these people are, right? Like, I was arguing with somebody over the weekend that was talking about and favoring DeSantis. Well, there's a lot of people that think DeSantis is backed by Paul Ryan, or that his presidential bid after the Florida state legislature convenes in May, he's going to announce. And whether you think so or don't think so, I pray to God he doesn't. But if he does, how do we know that this is a guy that hasn't been compromised? And I think about everybody. We've got to ask, regardless of our loyalties, we've got to ask those questions. And Harmeet Dillon was the Orange County, CAGOP, head, the chairwoman. I think I'm 99% sure about that. At one point, she's been in California politics for almost 3 decades, and yet she hasn't changed California. She hasn't, short of a couple of times, stood up for anything that wasn't anti-establishment, meaning California cabal establishment.
Right.
And yet we think with more money and more power, she's going to behave differently. I don't know, man. I just feel like we keep shooting ourselves in the foot. A lot of powerful people have backed her. So it may be viewed as uncouth for me to, say this. I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope she comes out knight in shining armor. But like you said, I don't think she has a chance. She may even know that she doesn't have a chance, and this may just be a political stunt anyways.
Could be.
But it's funny, man. There's only certain press I could get or JR could get until he won over certain people.
Right.
And dude, I'm telling you, the whole system, when you get in it, it is just nasty and ugly.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff here on Long Island that would confirm basically all of what you're talking about, and how deep the swamp runs, and how many rhinos there actually are, and the infiltration, and how deep it goes. Now, I want to pivot to another situation, I think, and I'm curious to know your opinion on this. Now, you would consider yourself a constitutionalist, right? Is that correct?
100%.
Yeah. All right. So, did you know what's going on with Title 42? Title 42 was set to expire last night, and the Supreme Court has once again halted the termination of Title 42, and we find out that the court ruled 5-4 in favor of an emergency request by Republican attorneys general from 19 states who sought to intervene in the defense of the Trump-era policy. This is on the Post-Millennial, and I hear 5-4, and I'm thinking, it must have been Roberts who defected and voted with the, so to speak, liberal justices on the Supreme Court, but it was actually Neil Gorsuch. But before we rush to judgment on is he a sellout, is he a flip-flopper, is he wishy-washy, what we find out is Gorsuch's reasoning for why he voted that way, and his main reasoning is that the Supreme Court should not be setting policy. He says in his dissent, quote, "Courts should not be in the business of perpetuating administrative edicts designed for one emergency only because elected officials have failed to address a different emergency, Gorsuch wrote. We are a court of law, not policymakers of last resort. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that Gorsuch is actually doing something judicially ethical by doing that because, Doug Gibbs, the constitutional man, as we call him, and he heads up a site called the Political Pistachio. You can go to politicalpistachio.com. But he's one of the educators for 1776, does our weekly constitutional classes, and is a personal friend and taught me a lot over the last 3 years. And one of the things he's made me realize is how much our courts now, the Supreme Court in particular, has become almost like the enforcer of law instead of being the enforcer of saying if laws are constitutional. That's what they were designed to do, basically.
Judicial review.
Exactly. Like, here's the existing law. Here's what we think about it. Here's what we don't think about it. But we're not almost amending, writing policies. And I think in his ruling, I think that's kind of what he's saying. Like, hey, the legislature, if Congress, if the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate aren't going to look at situations and say, hey, we need to fix this, otherwise the country's really going to be screwed up. They almost politically want to stay out of it because it's more politically advantageous for them, of course. They'd rather the court rule on it so they look like there was nothing they could do, right? It's all political posturing. And so I think Gorsuch was actually kind of slapping their hand a little bit. And hopefully the court will keep doing that because it'll force our lawmakers to do their job, which I think then potentially makes guys like Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell, some of these career politicians, and Cruz recently has been on our side, but he's on our side right now because it benefits him.
Right.
And that's what people have to understand. Don't get in bed with these guys because most of them are jellyfish, as you say. None of them have
it. You say it too. You're the chiropractor.
Yes. They're spineless wonders.
Yes.
I am the chiro. That's true. And Rand Paul really is the only one that I've ever seen with the backbone.
You won my heart because I was going to say the only one I'm willing to get in bed with is Rand Paul. And you just won my heart, and he didn't know that was coming. So, I mean, now, did you see the waste report, by the way, this year? He always puts out his Festivus report. He goes over the government waste. It's incredible.
Nope,
our government spent over $500,000. Over $500,000 in taxpayer funds, like $600,000. If again, you look at the federal budget, you could say drop in the bucket. But where else could we have put $655,000 that could have done better than studying the romance between parrots? That we did that. That happened. We spent over. You ready for this one? This is another good one. We spent over $187,000 to determine whether or not Thanos, Thanos from the Avengers, the Marvel character, whether or not he could actually snap his fingers in the metal Infinity Glove. Our government, the National Science Foundation, studied that. And you know what they found? That because the glove was metal, it was probably special effects and the snap wasn't real. That's what we're spending money on. We've spent millions of dollars getting mice drunk, millions of dollars in injecting hamsters with steroids to see the effect of roid rage in hamsters. We injected beagles with cocaine. I mean, this is what we did. So that's why I love Rand Paul.
Wow. It never ceases to amaze me. I think Charlie Kirk was pointing out the other day about Ronna McDaniel. What'd she spend? $300,000
on flowers. Yeah,
on flowers.
Yeah, $300,000 on flowers. They take these donors out. They spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars on pins. Pins. I mean, go to the dollar store. Like, what are we doing? If I was a donor to the RNC, I got to be honest, and I donated to the RNC, and I found out that my money was going to get me a pin or a nice flower centerpiece on my dinner table rather than going to win elections, I would be very upset. And that's why I like a guy like John Rich, who said, I'm not giving the RNC another dime. And that's why I tell people all the time, donate to candidates, not parties. Right? If you want to help a guy like J.R. Majewski, then you go to his campaign and you donate. You do not donate to the RNC in the hopes that money goes to somebody like that. Right or wrong?
Right, man. Because so often the money never gets there. And man, it's a dirty game. And everybody's got their hand out. Everybody's being paid off. Everybody says they can do it the best. And, everybody thinks that you need a different person to run your apparatus. I mean, my campaign team was 5 people, right? It
Right.
was 5 people and a bunch of mama bear volunteers. And instead of doing these expensive, elaborate texting systems, we got something that was dirt cheap, unconventional, and wasn't really used for politics. And we had volunteers sending out these mass texts, and there's no telling how many thousands of dollars we saved by doing that. And man, it's a dirty system. It's such a dirty system. And I think that's why I think from a solution standpoint, yes, you need to look at where you put your money, but also where do you put your time? Who are you watching? Are you watching people that are out there doing solutions? And then, turn off the TV and get really real about what your politicians, because that's what they are. They're politicians, with the exception of maybe a handful of 5, 10 guys out there. They're all pieces of crap that want to stay elected, and they'll sell out their country to do it. And most of them, their entire career has been based off doing that. So the fact that we think somebody's going to change their tune all of a sudden, it's disgusting, man. And Joe Biden, I mean, how many clips of that guy over a 40, 50-year career do we have of him flip-flopping to where it was politically beneficial for him?
He does it all the time. And just real quick to touch back on Justice Gorsuch, because I do think, as we were just kind of touching on, the principled stance that he's taking, judicially ethical, as you called it. Rand Paul likes to take stances like this too, where it may not be beneficial for how we feel, but it is beneficial for the longevity of our republic and how each branch of government is supposed to operate. We have a legislative branch to legislate. We have an executive branch to execute. We have a judicial branch to review those legislations and executions. And Gorsuch says here, for my part, I do not discount the state's concerns. Right? He says the states contend that they face an immigration crisis at the border, and policymakers have failed to agree on adequate measures to address it. Gorsuch added that the current border crisis, though, is not a COVID crisis, which was the pretense, which was the reason why Title 42 went into effect. But he does say that he does not discount the state's concerns. Even the federal government acknowledges that the end of Title 42 orders will likely have disruptive consequences. But he says on the Title 42 decision, this is the Supreme Court doing the job of Congress and the president. That's wrong. Good on Sotomayor, Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Gorsuch for dissenting. Former Representative Joe Walsh, a Republican from Illinois, tweeted. That is basically what we're seeing from the Supreme Court. They are using them as a de facto secondary fallback legislative branch. And if we let that become the role of the Supreme Court, we're in trouble.
Well, yeah, and they've honestly been doing it for really the Supreme Court's since its inception. You can see a Marbury versus Madison is a perfect example. Back in I think that was 65. Maybe my dates are wrong. Could be even before that, 1802. I'm quite a bit off there, but it was either 1802, 1865. Where judicial review first came into play. I'm not going to go into it tonight, but just look at that ruling. Very, very interesting when you look at the core basis of the ruling and what the Supreme Court decided to do and how they started treating their governmental role or judicial role, like almost what you see today. Like the overreach started there. It's kind of like, if you look at how presidents do executive orders, right? And what the first executive order was, George Washington said as president, hey, I want the troops to eat turkey for Thanksgiving, right? It's a suggestion, but it got grandfathered in as a policy.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems we have in our government. So, playing devil's advocate here, I am so just amazed and grateful that President Trump saw a loophole with Title 42, because I think he did, on where he could get past the noise of the left and say, okay, how do we restrict this just egregious immigration problem that we have, that the House, Congress isn't handling? How do we somehow, I can't get my wall built, I can only get it partially built. they're just blocking him every way they possibly can. And the Supreme Court's ruling against him. So I think it was brilliant. The problem I think we're facing now is, just as of, I think 48 hours ago, there was this massive tent that was built to
Yes.
house all these people. So they see it's coming, right? There's all these people rushing to the border to try to get in. What happens when this thing finally does cave? Because they're going to remove it. People are playing politics. In December of 2021, I think it was Anna Cutrith or Cutbirth, something like that was her name. She's second in command or third in command at the CDC. Of course, she's the one saying how, the flesh-eating bacteria with a 99.9% survival rate is going to kill everybody.
Right.
But then in December of 2021, she's saying, "Oh, Title 42 is evil, and God help us, and it's just a way, and
meanwhile,
and
Title 42 is
that
a
big
way
of a
to
deal."
was a COVID policy, which should have,
Right.
in theory, made her happy if she actually cared about and considered COVID a legitimate threat.
Right. But now we're into politics again. And this is where people have to see through the noise of the mainstream media, people that they like, people that have nice hair and wear beautiful ties and, just pander. That's where we really just have to get less loyal to these false gods. The Bible talks about it over and over again and say, okay, first of all, our number one is Jesus. Secondly, after that, after Jesus, it's the U.S. Constitution. And then everything falls. If Trump tomorrow went against the Constitution, I'm not voting for Trump.
I said that actually on a previous show. I think I said it yesterday, that if Donald Trump decided he was going to start to go against the Constitution, he would lose my support. Because we can't have that. That's the line in the sand. That would be the line in the sand. So, all right, we're closing in on 10 o'clock here. Why don't you tell everybody where they could find you? Where are you at right now?
You can go to 1776foreverfree.com, Dr. Cordie Williams, DrCordie Williams.com. 1776, the Twitter got hacked by a guy named Bob C. So still trying to get that back. Maybe I can ping Musk about that. Who knows? But yeah, you can find me. DrCordieW is pretty much my handle for everything. And tune in. We're going to try to get more consistent with holidays and Shawn's travel and my travel.
Yep.
Trying to talk on Mondays. So if it's not Wednesday night, it'll be Tuesday nights. And man, why don't you give them your My Pillow code?
So I'm not on My Pillow yet, but I am on Patriot Cigars. My Patriot Cigars. It's promo code Stay Loud. And also for anybody who's looking for a cool voice note, if you want me to record your voicemail, you can do it at CaptainDeplorable45.com. We're having a lot of fun with that project over there, so it's a lot of fun. Other than that, we will be back. This is the final show. What's that?
I will pass them My Pillow. My Pillow.
Yeah, you do your My Pillow.
It's CW, and any money, anything you get, part of it's obviously going to go to Mike. Part of it's going to help me run our nonprofit. We're not spending $300,000 on roses and pins and all that, so you don't have to worry about that. But the slippers, Mike has some amazing slippers, very fuzzy on your feet. They feel like my furry cat. Not to be weird or anything. I'm not asking you to sniff the cat. And so check them out. Like Corn Pop. That back of that kitty is like Corn Pop.
Corn Pop was a bad dude. Well, that's awesome. Yes, we will be back next week for our first show of the new year. This is the last show of the old year. And we will be looking to get much more consistent. Maybe an update on the Kari Lake lawsuit too. We'll see how that pans out and how that shakes out. But it's been a pleasure for everybody. We will be back next week right here on the Unalienable Right. Thank you for everybody for watching. Thanks for everybody for listening. Please hit the share button, hit the Rumble button, the repost button on your way out, and we'll catch you next Wednesday.
God bless.